us today. This is a Lunch and Learn webinar about Southern Appalachian Highlands Conservancy's work adding to public lands for people to enjoy for recreation. And we're so happy today for Michelle Pugliese, our Land Protection Director, and Jay Leutze, Senior Advisor to our board, and Hanni Muerdter, our Conservation Director, to be with us to talk about work that's happening currently at the organization. And so Southern Appalachian Highlands Conservancy has a multi-pronged approach to protecting land in the mountains. And we do work with private landowners on conservation easements to protect farmland. We work with municipalities to protect watersheds and pristine water sources for the region. We piece together lands for wildlife corridors and resilience to the warming climate. And so all of these goals are in our strategic plan for conservation. And over the years, I think we've protected about 80,000 acres. And we are especially proud of an aspect of our work that we're focusing on today, which is helping public agencies protect or add to public lands that we can all enjoy for our health and recreation and wellness. And I think this became especially noted during the pandemic when all of us really wanted to get outside and go for a hike in nature for kind of rejuvenation. And so the people using public lands naturally has an impact and impact on the land and trails. So one of our strategies has been to try to work with our agency partners to open new locations for being outdoors and being able to enjoy nature. And so all the projects we're going to focus on today help us carry out that organizational goal. And we're just super proud to be able to share these with us. So I think at this point, we're going to launch in, and Michelle's going to take the first case study and tell you about a recent addition to Roan Mountain State Park. I should mention before we get started that if you have questions or comments you want to share, feel free to type those into the Q&A or the live chat. We'll have some time at the end really to focus on questions, or if it's something we can answer right then, we'll do that too. So thank you.
Thank you. So I wanted to talk to you about Roan Mountain State Park. One method that we use to protect land for outdoor recreation is for SAHC to purchase strategically important lands that are at risk of development and hold them in the short term. The lands are conservation priorities for SAHC as well as our public agencies. In this case, we purchased the property that we call Sugar Hollow, which was a priority for the state of Tennessee as a way to expand Roan Mountain State Park. And it was also a priority for SAHC due to its adjacency to the state park, as well as some significant biological features that are found on site. So SAHC worked with our partners at the state to expand this beloved park in SAHC's flagship focus area in the Highlands of Roan. The property is 150 acres and it was listed on the market by a realtor. SAHC was able to move quickly and purchase the property and hold it for a short period of time until the state was able to purchase it from us. This benefited the sellers who had a need to sell the property quickly. SAHC was fulfilling our mission to safeguard important conservation land and support the goals of Tennessee state parks, who had a goal to expand Roan Mountain State Park. And so you can see on the contextual map here, the property is shown in yellow on the eastern boundary of Roan Mountain State Park, which is shown here in brown. Everything in green is the Cherokee National Forest, and then the Appalachian Trail runs along the state line. So you see Pisgah National Forest to the south. And then you can kind of see in yellow here, the Over Mountain Victory National Historic Trail that runs right along the edge of this property, as well as through Hampton Creek Cove State Natural Area. And all of these parcels in blue are tracts that SAHC owns and other management entities down here, state of North Carolina and the Nature Conservancy. So SAHC was able to buy the property just 6 months after, the state was able to buy the property from SAHC just 6 months after we purchased it. This shows a view of the property from the town of Roan Mountain. So we're looking south from Roan Mountain. And again, you can see Roan Mountain State Park to the right here, and the Sugar Hollow property outlined in blue, and following Hampton Creek Road, which is the route of the Over Mountain Victory Trail, connecting this state-held land to the Hampton Creek Coast State Natural Area and other properties SAHC owns, shown in blue. One of the features on the property is Hampton Creek itself, which a portion of it does flow through the property, and this is rated as an exceptional Tennessee waters, and it also is a naturally reproducing trout stream. Some other benefits of protecting the property include that it contains wetland habitats and seeps on site, and there are 5 state-listed species, including the 2 shown here, roundleaf bittercress and Roan Mountain sedge. And it also will add an estimated 10 miles of trails to Roan Mountain State Park. So visitors will be able to start at the visitor center, hike on some existing trails here, take a spur trail, and then this is the official map, so it doesn't show the property yet, but the property is right over here, and there will be about 10 miles of trails, as well as the state park's first backcountry camping. So SAHC purchased this property using private funding, as well as a bridge loan from a conservation lender. We purchased the property for $765,000, and we received one private philanthropic gift from a conservation donor for $300,000. And we obtained a bridge loan from a conservation lender for $465,000 to enable us to meet that purchase price. And the state of Tennessee purchased the property from us for $530,000 using Tennessee Heritage Trust Fund. So the proceeds from the sale to Tennessee, the sale of the property, enabled SAHC to repay our loan plus interest, as well as recover expenses that we had incurred during the transaction. This method that we used by having some private dollars going into the purchase also enabled us to sell it to the state at a bargain. So they did not have to pay the full price, the full listing price of the property. So we were able to work cooperatively with our partners, and some of them are shown here. Daniel and Monica from the state. This is the landowner that SAHC brought the property from. And initially we consulted with some other conservation partners. This is Gabby from the Nature Conservancy, of course myself. So that, and that is how we were able to purchase this property, and it is now owned by the state of Tennessee, and will be available to the public for recreation. We're probably about a year or 2 out from the trails being developed and ready for the public to visit. So I'm going to hand it over to Jay Leutze to talk about the future Pisgah View State Park.
Thanks, Michelle. That's it's a great description of a project that we're all really excited about, and it demonstrates one of the ways that we assist our public agency partners. And I'm going to talk about a different way that we assist public agency partners. Some of you have probably been to this property where the state is establishing a new state park, in the process of doing that right now. Some of you might have visited this property when it was Pisgah View Ranch. And the Cogburn and the Davis families had owned this property for over 200 years. And we believe one of the oldest structures still standing in Buncombe County is on this property, the old Davis homestead. So there's a lot of history here. It was, when it was Pisgah View Ranch, it was a dude ranch. And a lot of people had honeymoons there and had their wedding night there in that red barn that you can see in the picture. So it's really a treasured part of the landscape, just a few miles from Asheville, as you'll see in a second. But all of this land lays at the base of Mount Pisgah, which is an iconic peak that many of you are very familiar with. So here we've got a contextual map showing you in red the property that the family owns. And then you can see how close it is to other protected land in the Forest Service ownership and the Blue Ridge Parkway. A lot of you, I'm sure, have climbed Mount Pisgah and have been on that section of the parkway. So you've been very close to this property in the past, if you have been in that special part of the region. This will be only the second state park west of Asheville, Gorges State Park being the other one, and that's a relatively recent park as well. So you can see the attention that's been focused from the development community on Western North Carolina needs to coincide with additions to our state park and public land systems. So that's part of why we were so keen to do this project. The other reason is you just never get a chance to protect 1,600 acres at one time. Usually it takes multiple transactions to put together a block of land this large, and this was dealing with one seller. And I will not say that it was easy. This property was on the real estate market, as was the Sugar Hollow property that Michelle talked about, as was the property that Hanni is going to talk about. So sometimes we are really entering a discussion with a family who is willing to sell the property to whoever comes. In this case, the family had very good will, really wanted to protect the property, but was not sure that they could meet their financial goals of owning this very, very valuable piece of land. But they were very public spirited. And when we called them, having not talked to them for a few years, although we had tried to solve this conservation puzzle back in the early 2000s, we entered a great conversation. And in this case, SAHC actually helped the parties come together at a table. That table happened to be in our conference room on Merriman Avenue. Many of you have visited it. And that's where we negotiated this transaction, or sort of set up the conversation for the state and the sellers to negotiate with one another. So it's expensive, $18 million phased over 5 years. SAHC, part of our ongoing role is that we have a commitment in hand for $1 million, and that unlocks public dollars that are committed by trust funds, both at the state and the federal level. There are federal dollars that will flow into this project. And North Carolina has a number of trust funds, the Land and Water Fund and the North Carolina Parks and Recreation Trust Fund. The state is able to apply to those trust funds for funding. And then this year, with really robust funding in the legislature, there was a special provision included in the budget by a bipartisan group of legislators to inject a slug of $12 million in a special appropriation for this project alone. And we're really excited about that, really excited about the support that shows that we have in the legislature. So just to orient you a little bit, down at the bottom of the slide, you can see the direction arrow towards Asheville. This is a 15-20 minute drive from downtown Asheville. And you can see there at the upper part of the slide, the layout of the land and all of that unbroken forest around it, to us, looks like a lot of additional great conservation opportunities. And if you look to the right of it, you see another red outline. That is the project that Hanni is going to talk about. That's the Chestnut Mountain Nature Park that she'll tell us all about. But this is just to orient you and get you as excited as we are about this property. At one point was slated to be a high-end spa, and now it's going to be a state park that we will, a lot of our great memories and our kids' memories, the people that come behind us, great memories are going to be formed at Pisgah View State Park. And this is just a little bit of the celebration. Last year, just a year ago, Earth Day, the governor and Secretary Reed Wilson came to Pisgah View to to express their excitement about moving forward. And there on the right, you can see planners from the state park, as well as a member of the family that's selling the property to the state. And they're laying out a park in this slide with the state property office and people in the planning division. So this is happening. We think the window is probably about 3 more years before this park will be open and ready to receive visitors. So start planning your first night. There's going to be camping and all sorts of great things at this future state park.
Great. Thank you, Jay. So now we're going to transition to, so Michelle and Jay have been talking about partnering with state parks, and this project is partnering with a municipality, the town of Canton. So here we are just outside of the town of Canton, as you saw in a previous map. And Michelle, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So it's minutes from the town of Canton, and it really first caught our eye because it's a large tract. It's 450 acres, and you can go to the next slide too. Thanks, Michelle. It was 450 acres. It was for sale. We saw the for sale sign. We were aware that it had been on the market, and SAHC was first interested because of its traditional conservation values. It's in a really big hotspot for wildlife habitat and wildlife movement in this area. As well as just the sheer, like Jay talked about, the efficiency of size of projects. And at 450 acres, it was one of the largest remaining privately held tracts in Haywood County. So when that happens, we're always going to take a look. And then we thought also, because it's so close to the town of Canton, is this an opportunity to partner with the town to create a public recreation experience as well? And that really involved the town being excited about that and being able to say yes. And could we have compatible recreation features that would serve the population center? There's in Haywood County, there's a lot of protected land on the outskirts of Haywood County, but there's not that much protected land right close to population centers. So would this be an easy to access place for people to get outside, and also an economic driver for the town, so close to 1923 and I-40, which they were really interested in. So we were met with an enthusiastic kind of, yes, let's explore this and explore what could be a potential of what kind of recreation could happen. And we secured the property. So Southern Appalachian Highlands Conservancy's first primary role was to secure the property. So we raised funds, and Michelle will reveal some of those details. This was a $3.5 million acquisition project, and Jay talked about that there are trust funds through the state of North Carolina, and this one tapped into the North Carolina Land and Water Fund for a substantial grant. And then the Department of Justice also gave funds, as well as multiple other private donors. From large donations to smaller donations. They all were super beneficial and count, and we're really just thankful for the community input in this project. Next slide. And so then in this project specifically, SAHC has played a pretty big role in the planning for the park. Because we're going to be the long-term conservation easement holders, this property will be permanently protected by a couple of conservation easements, one by the state and one by Southern Appalachian, and we're going to monitor it forever and taking on that role. And we also are just very invested in kind of the outcome for this project. It's in a not so high area for natural heritage, which is kind of advantageous for recreation, because you don't want to put your highest recreational impact features on properties that are really significant for rare plants, for instance. So we looked at this property and helped the town and to kind of assess where were appropriate places to put things that they were really interested in, such as bike skills development course and other mountain biking trails. And we were able to utilize kind of the most already impacted areas of this property. This property in the late 90s was slated to be in a NASCAR speedway type track and it was a lot of grading work what happened for that dream that was never realized. And so that became the I guess palette for us to place the higher impact biking trails on. So Michelle, you can show. So we were also invested in a thoughtful process for planning, and really wanted to make sure the community was involved, and all of our partners, who have great amount of resource and knowledge on creating parks, and as well as just what does the community want? Not us imposing all of our ideas of what should be there, but what are the really big drivers for what the community wants. And we got over 4,000 public input responses to our public input survey that happened over COVID. And then out of that public input was developed an advisory committee as well. And then out of it came a lot of planning documents came out of that, including plans for how to take care of the property from a more natural resource management perspective, a recreation plan, a trail plan, and then an overall master plan. Great. And so the last part, the SAHC, is really one of the key things that we're going to be involved in forever. As I mentioned, is we're going to be holder of a permanent conservation easement and responsible for making sure the uses on the park are consistent with that conservation easement, as well as we're the monitoring liaison for the state of North Carolina. Great. So where are we now? What's happening with this park? The first phase, it's exciting. The first phase of this park is opening April 23rd. So if you want to go out and see, we're not sure if it's going to be very crowded. It might be. So if you want a less crowded experience, you might want to come back on another day. But the first phase that is going to open is a bike skills park, which is shown kind of in the bottom left, which is kind of an intensive, smaller acreage area, I think over about 15 acres of skills trails with jumps. And this is all progressive from toddler bikes up to very skilled, very advanced riders. And the idea with the progression skills is you can learn on lower level trails if you're starting out for the first time, and you can progress up as far as you want. And so 35 acres of the 450 acres of the full property will be open on April 23rd. That also includes one out and back trail that's both shared by hikers and bikers. The town of Canton just acquired $600,000 in grants from the state of North Carolina and some federal money to help further develop this park and to implement the master plan, those features that are called for in the master and recreation plan. And so coming in the next couple of years are going to be more trails, including hiker only trails, as I think they're aware and are sensitive to sometimes people just want to hike and not compete with trail use with bikes. And there's going to be other downhill biking courses or biking trails on this property, as well as trying to develop more of the front country, which is the area you see the Chestnut Mountain Nature Park sign, that's more accessible to a lot of different kinds of day users or people who want a short trail, as well as hopefully an ADA trail that's going to be along this area, and picnicking and such. So that is kind of the overall update for this as far as public use is going to happen. And SAHC still owns this tract, and the plan is hopefully in a couple weeks before this opening that we're scheduled to transfer this property to the town of Canton. So they'll be the long-term owner. Great. Are there any questions? Now, Carl, I can hand it over to you.
Well, thank y'all for all those presentations, and each one of these case studies is so worthwhile and have things in common with one another, but they're also different. We did have one question in the Q&A about how SAHC identifies and qualifies properties for conservation work, and where all of us on this panel could talk further about that. we've done planning over the years and mapping. We use layers of data about information about the landscape, whether it's the water resources or the intact forest cover, proximity or adjacency to existing protected lands. And we try to be thoughtful about identifying priority properties to reach out for proactively. And I think the participant in the webinar who asked the question lives on Roan Mountain and was wondering how we think about that landscape in particular. And if you have land and want to talk with us about potential conservation, I would say reaching out to us, and we can see how your property fits in with the protected landscape and other priorities the organization is working on. I will share that we have, I think, 38 transactions in the works, and that was from a week or two ago when we put that table of projects together, and I've been told since then that I left a few out. So it's a very dynamic process. Lots of land is being bought and sold in the landscape, and a lot of families who are thinking about intergenerational transfer of their land are coming to us to look at conservation easements as a strategy for future of the land. And we're thrilled to be working on so many projects and I think making an impact in the mountains. It looks like we may have one more question. Asking about Forest Service. And if the Forest Service doesn't accept a land donation, if there's a conservation easement on it, and is that always the case? And questions about whether state parks would be a route to go. So that's another great question. And typically, when we acquire land that we hope will be transferred to the national forests, either the Pisgah in North Carolina or the Cherokee, they do look for land to be unencumbered with the conservation easement. So it's good to think about the long-term goal for ownership of the property as you embark on thinking about what kind of steps you might want to take for conservation of the property. I don't know if others on the panel want to weigh in on that question about encumbrances and conservation easements and eventual transfer to public lands. Nuanced question.
I can just jump in and say that sometimes it depends on the type of funding that we obtain. In the state of North Carolina, we get grants from the North Carolina Land and Water Fund. And if we are purchasing land with those funds, we're required to place a conservation easement that the state holds on the land as a condition of accepting the money from the state government. So in some instances, then we will have a conservation easement on the land, dependent on the funding that we use to purchase it.
And I was going to go back for just a second to the original question about how we identify land, because it helps illuminate the answer to the second question. We are in close partnership throughout any transaction that we're going to begin within the Forest Service proclamation boundary. We are speaking to our Forest Service friends to learn their priorities. And so sometimes they're reaching out to us saying, we have a priority project, we can't move quickly enough. Can SAHC help us obtain it? In that case, the lines of communication are wide open. You wouldn't stumble into an easement on a property like that would then make it difficult to transfer out, because we really try to be in lockstep with our partners. Same thing with state parks. Mount Mitchell State Park, for example, is not finished yet. None of the state parks are finished. They all have in-holdings and additions that can be made that will enhance the visitor experience or help the state or the whatever agency meet some of their goals. So I wanted to just make it clear that we wouldn't be protecting land right next to a state park and encumbering it with an easement that would then, by surprise in the future, make it difficult to work with that partner.
Great point.
And I just got a direct question about the bike skills course on Chestnut Mountain. And that is a partnership with the Burn Peak and Seth Alvo, who's a YouTuber who really funded and crowdsourced funds to raise money for that. It's $200,000 match to create that bike skills course that I was talking about. So thank you to him as a big partner.
We're grateful for everybody on the panel and everybody who's joined this webinar. And we do have other webinars coming up, so we'll hope you'll continue to participate in these.
Looks like we have one more short question from Betty. What time is the opening of Chestnut Mountain Nature Park on April 23rd? And how do we get directions?
Thanks. So I saw Angela was answering it, typing, and the hours just changed, but I think it's 11 a.m. But please, Angela, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, we're still working on the release with the town of Canton. So we should have that info up on the website at appalachian.org, hopefully by Friday, I think for sure by Monday. And if you're on our e-news list for the newsletters that we send out, we'll be putting that in the next e-news. So you can also sign up for that at appalachian.org.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Well, it looks like there aren't more questions. So we again appreciate everybody joining this today and look forward to seeing you at the next webinar, hopefully. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.